Thanks for joining me for our August webinar. This webinar is specifically on managing artist applications. We're going to go over some new tools that we have implemented on ZAPP, and we're also going to just cover some of the, good old tools and maybe some tools that you're not using as much or not thinking about using in these ways. I'm Julia Pasentino. I'm our communications and support coordinator, so you may interact with me via email, but I also host our monthly webinars. So the first tool I'm going to go into, the first section is going to be about new tools specifically, and the first tool I'm going to go into is invitational only events. I know we've gotten quite a few questions about these since their launch. It's a really exciting enhancement that is essentially going to allow you to limit the number of artists that are able to access and apply to your event. This is going to be really useful for events that are rolling over a select group of artists from 2020 to 2021, or if you have a situation where you are actually hosting an invitational only event and maybe only artists within your sphere of influence or artists who are members are actually allowed to apply. So the way to create an invitational only event is going to be to let us know once you are ready to renew your event. It's a setting on the back end, so we'll be sure to turn on that setting so that you get this invite only access code. You'll know for sure that your event is invite only because you will have this invite only access code, and it is custom to each event and each application. Artists will not be able to access your invitation without this code. So if we go over to the artist side of ZAPP and log in real fast, we can go to the Apply to Shows page. So for anyone who doesn't know, the Apply to Shows page is where every event that has an open application lives. And as an artist, I can also filter by invite-only events. And right now I can just see we have 2 test invite-only events that are accepting applications. We're going to be working with this one today. And once I come to this page, I'll be able to view your information just as always. So if you are in a position where this is unique to this year and you are not always an invite-only event, then artists who are still interested in applying your event but maybe can't this year because you don't have any open spaces for them, they can still view your information, find out more about your event. They can favorite your event from the other page, and favorites retain year after year. So they will be able to find your event next year if they find it interesting. So they'll still be able to view all of your information. Anything you enter will be visible here. They just won't be able to view and fill out your application. However, once I enter this code and click apply to the show, now I have access to your event application. I can agree to the legal agreement and move forward into the actual application itself. So really useful for limiting application numbers if you have a group of artists that you know are going to apply that are maybe already pre-invited and you don't want to invite any new artists. I know there are some events that are going through that, particularly in 2021. So that's kind of the basics of invite-only events. The only thing you'll want to keep in mind with this is that they do need the code, so you can use the communication tool to send, an email to an artist in your archived event. So if you have your 2020 event and you're sending the code to invited 2020 artists, you'll want to go into your archived event, send them that code, and then they can use that code to apply. The other nifty thing with that is that you won't need to use a coupon code if you're going this way, because you can make your application fee $0 if you're rolling over those fees. So you're not going to have to worry about any new artists applying. You can make your fee $0 so you don't have to worry about coupon codes. And then you can just communicate the specific access code once you're ready. One of the things I also wanted to mention with these events is I know some events also carry a wait list. If you're in a position where you are rolling over your 2020 artists to 2021, you can stagger the artists who are using the code by sending them to, say, one status at a time. So you could send it to all of your confirmed 2020 artists, the invite-only code, you could send that code to only your 2020 confirmed artists, and then you could wait a certain amount of time and then send the code to your waitlist artists or specific waitlist artists if you have an exact list numbering that you go through and you don't want to send the code to everyone. So the second new tool that we have is going to be conditional logic. I've talked about it in a couple of webinars, but I'm going to talk about it here again as well because I think it's a really useful tool specifically for inviting multiple different types of artists, because it allows you to essentially create 2 different sets of application questions if that's something that you're interested in. For instance, I've created these 3 questions right here. I have 2020 artist or not, whether or not somebody's buy sell, and whether or not they have like a 2020 artist application ID. The reason I'm asking for an application ID in one of the questions is because I'm using it to verify whether or not they were actually invited / confirmed in 2020 for this 2021 application. So my main question right here is, are you a 2020 artist or not? So that's just a quick single select question. The title is, title for my internal use is just 2020 artist or not. And the question is, were you invited in 2020? They have 2 options, and this answer is required. I've chosen not to include any help text here because I don't feel like it's needed, but you could definitely include, for your event, you could include, yes, we're asking this question because we only have a select number of spots and we're verifying rollover applications. So you could absolutely include help text in that way. And then I have these 2 other questions, which I've given conditional logic to both of them. So it's a required question that asks, are you buy sell? The reason I've included this one under conditional logic is because maybe your 2020 artists that you've already vetted, juried, and rolled over, they maybe don't need to answer this question because they answered it in 2020. So this one will only show, the conditional logic is on, so it will only show if the answer to are you a 2020 artist is no, I'm not a 2020 artist. And then I have this one, which is the artist application ID. We can also make this question required. And I said, please add your application ID for 2020 below. You can add that it's specifically for the vetting process if that's something you're interested in adding. And then I also added just right in the question a little bit of help text that, application IDs for 2020 can be found on your My ZAPPlications page, just so artists who maybe don't know where to find that information can find it. And then this question only shows if the answer to are you a 2020 artist is yes. And so if we go ahead and update that and then look over here, basically on the artist side, then when I click yes, I get this question, which is, please add your application ID from 2020. And then if I click no, I get the I affirm that my work is not buy sell. And those questions only show depending on those answers. So you could definitely, if you're in a position where you need to collect additional information from your 2020 artists, but not all of the information, you could nest essentially some of those questions under a conditional logic question that asks whether or not they were invited in 2020. And so that's kind of how you can use conditional questions to gather additional information that you're going to need to manage your artists in 2021. Our third tool that I want to talk about is emailing tagged and flagged artists. This is new. This is an extension of the original tagging edition. And so if I click on a status, and then I'll now see this drop down. So this used to be a thing where basically all you could do is choose to, I believe, exclude flagged applicants. And now you can choose to include only tagged or flagged applicants or exclude them. You can also select all with this nifty little select all thing. That's new as well, but a little bit less exciting, I think, than choosing to include only tagged artists. So tags are going to be something we talk about a little bit later in the webinar, but they're going to be a really useful tool for you in 2021, just because it's going to be a really easy way for you to separate out your artists. And with this ability to only send to tagged or flagged artists, you will have the option to essentially create your own custom groups within ZAPP for you to send emails to, which is going to be really useful if you need specific information from only your new 2021 artists, or if you want to tell your 2021 artists ahead of time that it's time to purchase booths, or if they didn't purchase booths in 2020, or it's time to accept their invitation. Tags are going to be really useful for that, and using this tool, which is to include only tagged artists, is going to be really useful for that as well. And then on the flip side, when you're going to email your new 2021 artists, you could then just choose to exclude that same tag. So the tag I use just on instinct is 2020 for 2020 artists. And that'll just, make sure that you're keeping them really separate if that is a situation that you are in. And then you'll just compose your email as normal. You can create multiple templates. One thing I do want to mention is that if you build an email in ZAPP, you're going to want to make sure you either do that in a template or you are doing that quickly, because you can still get timed out. This happened the other day, so I just want to do a quick shout out to maybe build your emails outside of ZAPP and then copy and paste them in. That might be a really useful way to do it, or create a custom template because you can save those as you go. Just a little shout out to that moment. And everything else about the email composition is going to be the same. And yeah, and that'll help you target specific groups of artists as you go. So our fourth enhancement that is new is the artist citation page. You may have already noticed this one, but basically what it looks like now is different. You get to the artist citation page by clicking the application ID found on the event management table. If you don't load the table, haven't loaded the table in a while, you can just load it by clicking on the number, or you can click here to view all applicants if you want to load the full table with every single application you've received. So if I click on this application ID, I will get the new artist citation page. It's redesigned and it's reorganized so that it's a bit easier. And there's a couple of new features that you have on this page that didn't used to be here that are kind of long requested. So tags are going to be up in the corner. You can create up to three custom tags if you use a deposit product type, which we're not going to talk about too much in this webinar, but we definitely can if people have questions. The deposit product type automatically adds a tag deposit. It is not counted in your 3 tags. So you can have 3 tags plus a deposit tag if you are using deposit products. You have the option to download the PDF just like you always have. And then we've broken up these sections. So you have a contact information section. You have the event data section, which is going to include, everything from, what status, what medium category do they have? They have a booth number, waitlist number. You can now flag artists on this page. So if you're going along and you see something that is up with this application, you need to follow up with the artist, or maybe you need to move them into complete and then, talk to them later about it. You can flag them right on this page and click Save Changes to make sure they're in effect. You can change their status right on this page. So as I mentioned, if you're looking through this and you're thinking, oh, wow, they need a bunch of other information that we don't have, I'm going to move them to incomplete if it's before my application deadline, exception if it's after my application deadline. And then I will let them know that they need to make edits to their application. You'll just want to make sure you click the change status for those changes to take effect. And then you can add a tag right in this same section, as well as add an administrator comment. Again, so flags, adding comments, and viewing status history, those were features that were found mostly on the event management table that are now found in both places, so you can add them as you go. And that's the event data section. So that might be an area that you work in a little bit more than you typically would on the artist citation page. You have all the answers to the custom questions, just as always. Images, click on them, they'll pop up just like always. Same for emails, and you'll also be able to see payment IDs as well as check numbers if they have them, if that's applicable to you. And then the other exciting thing we added here is related apps. So we recently had a related apps section, and it also is on the event management table, and now it also lives on the artist citation page so that you can find any additional applications that artist account may have. So if you allow multiple applications to your event, you can now see any related applications for one application on this page. We also have these new nifty go forward and go backward arrows, so you can navigate between applications without having to go back to the event management table and reload it. So click that and you go to your next artist. And so that's our new artist citation page. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask them about it. If you see something that you want to see on this page in the future, go ahead and let us know so that we can know that that's something that's on your mind. And it's just going to be useful for, regardless of how you're managing your artists next year. Our citation page is always a, kind of like a hub for a specific artist, so you can see additional information. So we've just added more information to it, essentially. Check my questions. So I do have a question from Mo. Any plans to add social media addresses to the contact info? Yes, it is on our wish list. I don't know exactly where it is priority-wise on our wish list, particularly considering the pandemic, but it is absolutely something that we want to do because we recognize the importance of connecting with artists socially and then using, using both your reach and their reach to get more reach. So now kind of moving on to our maybe less utilized tools. One of the things I always like to bring up is how much you can customize the event management table. When the customization for the event management table originally went live, we didn't have a lot of people kind of realize it was different, but there is a fair amount of customization and organization you can do just within this table itself. And so you can do that by clicking the table editor. And then you can essentially change the table to reflect the information that you need based off of what point of time you are within your application cycle. So at the beginning, you might need when the app was received and contact information like their email and phone number because you might be following up on specific information they have. After they're invited, you might need more things like, what related apps do they have? Are those applications invited as well? That sort of thing. So you might choose to make sure that related applications, wherever it went, is on. You can only have a maximum of 8 fields displaying at one time. So that's why the save button went gray and then not gray. So you'll just might want to make so you can select different fields that you want to display at this table by simply unclicking and then re-clicking whichever checkboxes you want. And then once you're onto booths, you might need booth numbers, but maybe you don't need when the application was received. You'd rather have payments and medium category and these other things. And then depending on whether or not you're using tags, you might either want them selected or want them not selected. It's kind of depending on what you're doing. And then the table will automatically shift as soon as you save it. And a lot of these fields can also be organized by clicking on the header. So you can organize by alphabetically. If you have booth numbers, that might be really useful for you just because you can then pull the top booth number. You can pull your booths in order and then see if you've missed any numbers essentially as you go through. And that could just be a good double check you do if that's something that applies to your event if you assign booth numbers on ZAPP. You can also search through the event table by using, name, business name, and then really importantly for, this upcoming year, you can choose to show tagged artists only or search for your specific tag so you can see all the artists who you have tagged that. You can also pull tags to the top by clicking on the little tab drop down or pull them to the bottom, just kind of depending on what you want to do. And so the other thing that I always like to give a little bit of a shout out to when I'm on the event management table is that if you are accepting check payments, they'll come into ZAPP as pending and the artist will automatically move to the awaiting payment by check status, regardless of whether or not it's a jury fee or a booth fee. And so you'll want to make sure that you're going in when you do receive the check and you're changing it to maybe received. If that's applicable. If you don't receive it, then you go ahead and change it to not received or returned, depending on whichever one works best. And then you can also make sure that you're changing their status to whichever one is applicable. And the reason to do this is because on the income breakdown report, which we're going to go over, the checks will show as pending payments. And I know that we always get questions typically around the end of the fiscal year for individual events about where certain money is because they're seeing checks as pending. And the reason they're seeing them as pending is because they weren't moved to received within the event management table. And once you do that, you just want to make sure you're clicking update all so that that works. And then the other thing is you also have the option to move all applicants. This is really useful if you might be editing your event in some way, or if you have specific applicants that you're moving around based off of whether or not you re-invited 2021 artists. You might automatically move all of them into one status and then decide that you want to move them into another. I know some people move people into accepted and then realize that they wanted to move them into invited. So if you are in that position, you can just move all of your applicants from one status to another by using this drop down and changing them. As a quick note, we recommend moving people into invited rather than accepted, because in the invited status, artists have the option to accept or decline their invitation. And that just helps you in the long run, so that way you know who has accepted and who has declined their invitation, and who you might need and what spaces you might need to fill from your waitlist. The other little note that I want to point out is the status change history. We get questions about this every once in a while about how an artist ended up in a particular status. You can see who moved themselves where by clicking that little status change history button. So if you are in an event that has, 3 or 4 admins that are, managing artist applications, and you have a question about one, you can use that status change history to find out more information about it. Our next feature is going to be reports. And I know I get a lot of questions about, managing artist applications throughout, with the 2020 rollover, and using reports from each year is probably going to be really helpful. Using coupon codes is going to be really helpful for double checking things as well, but the reports are going to allow you to do it in kind of a spreadsheet form. So we have 3 main reports that I'm going to talk about today. We have more than 3 total, but there's 3 I want to talk about. And that's going to be the download contacts CSV, the download answers CSV, and the income breakdown report. So download contacts and download answers are found on the event management page below the event management table. And income breakdown report is found within the reports tab up there. And so if you're having artists roll over from 2020 to 2021, you can definitely use the contacts report from 2020 and cross-check it with your answers report from 2021. I would do that if I was specifically hosting a system where I was verifying information. So that would kind of go along with the conditional logic question I asked earlier in the webinar, which was, list your application ID from 2020. So ideally then, in my 2021 application, I would have an answer for every single artist who was a 2020 artist within my answers report that then I could verify against my contacts report, because all the reports are going to pull the application ID, and so it would be easiest to verify the application ID in your answers report with the application ID you have in your contacts report for, say, your confirmed or invited artists, just depending on what part of the process you were at, they might be in a different status. So in order to do that, all I would need to do is download the contacts report for maybe an archived event, and then download my answers report for my 2021 event. And so that's kind of just a way that you can manage artists across events, as I know a lot of people are going to be doing next year. They're also just great tools to use if you're not doing that, because they do have so much information. You can sort, you can filter, you can, find duplicates within Excel, and you can put in a formula within Google Sheets, I believe, to find duplicates as well. If you want to find them on a spreadsheet, or you're using information in ZAPP and also using another database of a sort, you can also use those reports really simply to verify information and do all of that. And then within the income breakdown report, one of the reasons I was so keen to bring it up today is because you can kind of control what you see pretty well within the filter options, and the income breakdown report is going to have coupon code information, and it's going to have all transaction information. You're also going to be able to see coupon codes on the event management table, but you can see coupon codes on the income breakdown report as well, and you can sort of see them at more of a glance and download a report with them in there. They're going to be in the income breakdown report when you go to download a report. So if you are downloading the report, you don't want to view it on ZAPP, just make sure you're checking this display downloads only box, and then that will just create a button for you to download the report. And then, so I'm just going to run this report really fast, and we can see, all of the transaction information. So one of the things I can do is I can hide all checks and all credit cards. So if you have a coupon code that's that will make your fee $0, and you just want a list of everyone who paid $0, quote unquote, for their application fee, you can do that by hiding all checks and hiding all credit cards, because they wouldn't have actually made a transaction in that nature. They would have made a $0 transaction or a discount transaction. And so then I can run the report, and I'm only going to see here fees that were $0 and coupon codes if that's applicable. So, you know, we have some, because these are test events, we have quite a few $0 fees, but you can also see here at the top that I have all of these coupon codes. So if I was in a position where I was running an event that had 2020 artists who were rolling over and using coupons, and I also had new 2021 artists to fill, say, 50% of the show, I would run, you know, two income breakdown reports. One where I was hiding all checks and credit cards. I'd pull that report because likely that would be all of the fees that were done with a coupon, and then I could use the income breakdown report to verify against last year's event, and also just for internal reporting. And then I would run a second income breakdown report where I only saw checks and credit card payments, and I hid all discounts and all $0 transactions, so that I could come in here and get a list of everyone who did pay with a, you know, who did have to pay their fee, with whether that's a booth fee or whether that's an application fee. So that's kind of an additional way that you can use the income breakdown report that maybe you weren't using it in the past, either because you didn't have to or because you just weren't using it as much. One other note about the income breakdown report is that this is where you can also verify remittance statements. Depending on your event, you may have to add a bit more into it, but basically the income breakdown report will include all of the revenue your event collected on ZAPP at all. And so when we send remittance reports, we send them for 1 month at a time. So for that, maybe we'll go to last month, and we'll go to the first of the month of 2020, and then we'll go to the last of the month of 2020. And I'm going to hide all checks, actually, because checks payments will always go directly to you. Then I'll click run report, and then I can see the exact revenue that I collected within that month as an event. If you have multiple events, they will be broken down here. Your remittance report will be for every event, but they'll be broken down within your income breakdown report. You will also be able to see the total amount of revenue you collected, the credit card fees you had, and the total you had after credit card fees. So the income breakdown report includes those two items, so revenue and credit card fees. It does not include per app fees if that's applicable to you, and it does not include basic licensing fees, at least at this time. But you will also be able to see the amount you collected via credit cards, via checks, and then pending. If you have pending checks, I kind of mentioned it earlier, but you'll just want to go onto the event management page, make sure that you're changing those checks to received. And that's how you can use the system on ZAPP to also verify the amount you get on your check remittance. Check remittances also come with a remittance statement, so per app fees and licensing fees will be listed on that statement itself. All other transactional things will be listed by day. So if you're looking for specific transactional information for specific artists, you'll want to use the income breakdown report. So tags are kind of going to be, I would say, probably the favorite tool of 2021, just because it's going to make it so much easier to manage your artists. So you can add a tag by clicking on the application ID, going in here, and then saying where it says create tag. Click that, click add, and it'll automatically add it there. And you'll also see it at the top. When you go to your event management page, you will see the tags here. If an artist has multiple tags, you'll see them stacked like this alphabetically with numbers at the bottom. And then you can also choose to just show tagged artists on this table, and then you'll have that information. So one of the things here that is going to be happening is you within pay. So if you are in, again, the position where you're rolling over artists from 2020 to 2021, and say you're doing that with coupon codes rather than an invitational only event, you will see coupon code information right in here. I feel like I should have some. Oh, if we just have those here. But you will see coupon codes listed if they are applied. I don't have any that applied with a coupon code in this particular instance, but in a normal case, you would have coupon codes listed within this payment section, and you would see that they paid with a coupon code. So one of the things that's going to be useful to you if you are having 2020 artists use a coupon code to apply is looking at that and then immediately going into the application ID and then adding the 2020 code, 2020 tag, or whatever tag that you're going to be using as you go, so that it doesn't become this task, this like really hard task towards the end of your application cycle. So, you know, you can just look through as you go, tag the artist 2020. You can also move them from received to reviewed. Artists automatically go into received when they apply on ZAPP unless they paid by check, go into awaiting payment by check. But if you're reviewing as you go and adding tags as you go, you can then move them to reviewed if you're just rolling over, say, application fees and invitations aren't coming with that. If invitations are coming with that, you can choose to move them either to exempt from jury or invited. In this specific case where these artists were already invited, I would say move them directly back into invited. Then they'll have the option to accept their payment again, accept their invitation again, move to accepted, and purchase a booth if needed, or not purchase a booth if not needed. You can also move them directly to confirmed, or you can have them, we're going to talk about it a little bit, but you can have them essentially check out like a $0 product for your booth for like booth reservations if you would prefer to do it that way. Or, you know, if you have some sort of specific scenario where you were only able, where you rolled over, you know, say like 50% of the booth fee. I know a few people did 50% refunds and then 50% rolled over. You can also have, you know, set up a product so that that's 50% off, or set up a coupon code for 50% off. The other thing I want to say about tags is they're internal only. Artists will not see the tags, so they're just for your management, and they're going to be really useful for emailing specific groups of artists and making sure you are keeping track of all of those artists. They'll also be able to be, they're also downloadable within the answers report. So the final thing I'm going to talk about before I go into the questions that I got before this webinar is product management. So within the product editor, you might be doing some things differently next year than you would typically be doing. And you can do a few things to work with that. So if you have an invitational only event and you do not intend to accept any new applications, you can keep this cost at $0, and then you don't have to worry about coupon codes. If you are in a position where you'll be doing coupon codes, what you can do is you can make this whatever the cost of your fee is, then create a coupon code. If you don't know how to do this, we do have resources in our help center, and our help center is new and searchable and great, so you should use it. You can create a coupon code here and then apply it to whatever fees you'd like. So when it comes to, you know, maybe 2020 artists, maybe you're creating 100% off, and you do have a limit of, you know, however many artists you have. So maybe I have 150, and then I have a code, and you'll want to make sure that you have the correct start and end date, and then you can apply it to whatever fees you need. So if you're not doing an invitational only event, and you will need to charge at least some artists an application fee and some artists a booth fee, but not all artists, you can create just one coupon code if all of your 2020 artists have already purchased booths, and then apply it to both the application fee and the booths that you may have or that may be applicable. If maybe you have multiple types of booths like this, and you need to section those artists out so that artists aren't using, you know, a coupon code to buy a booth that is bigger than the one that they originally paid for, you can create multiple sets of coupon codes. You can tag your artists with whatever booth they had, or you can ask it as a custom question if you'd like. And then you can send out the coupon codes for those booth fees dependent on which purchase they made in 2020. If you're going to be segmenting like that, I would recommend tags so that you can also, you know, include or exclude specific tags for when you send those emails, just to prevent artists from using coupon codes for things that they're not meant to be used for. So just something to consider with coupon codes, depending on how your event is going to be organized next year. Yeah. And so the other thing that you can do here that you might not have done before is you could create a new product type that is just like a booth reservation. So if you don't need to have artists reserve certain types of booths, or maybe you're just or maybe you just don't, you're in an invitational only event and you don't need them to purchase booths at all, but you still want like that confirmation or a reservation of some sort for specific booth products, you can do that by creating a, a $0 booth product for the booth, and then, accepting payments, and they'll just make this a booth product, and then they'll be able to purchase this product, and move directly to the confirmed status. So if you still want to go through that process where they're reconfirming their attendance, you can do that with a $0 booth reservation fee, if you will. The other thing you can do that is not about specifically moving 2020 artists to 2021, but is just kind of a cool thing that I've seen other events do in here, is you can create multiple different booth products for different sections of your event. So if you have a lot of different sections within your event and each one has a quantity amount and artists do have preference over which area they're in, rather than having, one booth product with all, one booth product for all your booths, or, the option between one booth product and a double booth and then 4 corners or something like that, you can add booth products by location, and then you can limit them by location so that maybe it's first come, first serve. Whoever gets there first gets the booth, gets to choose their location, and then artists can purchase booths by location. It might not be applicable to your event, but it is kind of a fun way to think about how you can use the product editor to streamline even more of your event management. So then you're not having to follow up with questions like, well, where is your booth? Or like, what's your preference over here? This just could kind of streamline that process for you so you don't have to do it manually. When you download the income breakdown report, you will also get the name of the product, so you can use that report to separate your artists as well. So the first question I had was, how do you recommend that we handle an event where all 2020 statuses are holding for 2021 if we don't want to redo the application process? So ZAPP does require that 2021 events, if it's a full year from your 2020 event, it needs to be on its own application, so we can't roll all artists over. At first, it seems a little counterintuitive, but it's actually because every single artist accepts the legal agreement. The legal agreement, as you may know, is frozen from the moment that you publish your event on ZAPP. And the reason that we can't roll artists from 2020 over to 2021 is because it actually jeopardizes, your safety against chargebacks and their, actual acknowledgement of the legal agreement. It makes it far less binding because the legal agreement was for your 2020 show. However, what I will say is that if you are in a position where you're rolling every single status over, and you still want to use ZAPP to manage your event, you can essentially use your application as kind of a confirmation packet, if you will. So rather than worry about asking questions you would ask new applicants, you might ask questions that you'd only ask your confirmed applicants. So you wouldn't need conditional logic, but you might ask, specific events like tax ID information, or hotel information, car information, all of that, and that information you might normally include in a packet outside of ZAPP, you could do in ZAPP in this moment. And you could also, collect new promotional images that way. Some artists might feel like, oh, they don't want to have their promotional images be artwork that they made last year or they made the year before to specifically apply in 2020. So you'll have the opportunity to collect new images from them. So even though they're reapplying, it'll be more like you're gathering information that you'll need to manage your actual physical event. And that is kind of how I would see using the application if you're going to roll over every single status. You'll also save money in things like per app fees if you do that, particularly if you're invitational only, because you can control exactly how many codes you're giving out and how many people are applying. So one of the things you can do is you can wait to send the code to people like your wait list, or you can send it to just your invited artists or accepted artists first. Have them apply and then fill any spots as needed from your wait list. And you can really control that process with invitational only events. That way, you'll also just have a bunch of clean information for 2021. The second question I got is, I am sorting all artists that receive refunds or rolling over payments in 2021, looking for tips on how to manage all this when accepting 2021 applications with so many artists that will receive comp application fees and need to be jury exempt. So how I would manage that is, you'll have a coupon code for those artists who are rolling over their fees that are going to be actually exempt from your jury, and they won't be paying any fees. And so what I would do is make sure I'm keeping a really close eye on the received status for your applications, particularly after you give out that code, because likely what'll happen is that those artists are going to get the code and then they'll go apply right away. So, you know, in the first week or two after you give out that code, just keep a really close eye on the received status. And as artists come in, you'll see within the payment section that they paid with a coupon code. You can also verify in the income breakdown report. And as you see that, I would click on their application ID, go in here, you know, check any information that you ask that you want to double check, tag them as 2020 or 2020 artist, whatever you'd like. And then right here, move them immediately to invited so that they can accept their invitation, and then just click change status. That way you're moving people as you go and you're keeping them tagged, which will keep them organized in the long run when you eventually have artists who have gone through your jury and then are in the status commingled with the artists from 2020. Then they can also, you know, purchase their booth if needed, or they can use another coupon code to purchase their booth if you're still doing booth purchases through ZAPP that year. I don't know exactly the situation, whether or not you're in a position where they need to repurchase booth payments, they need to repurchase booths. If so, they can use a coupon code to do that, move to confirmed. You don't have to create additional products or anything like that. But if not, then they can just go ahead and purchase a booth product right from the invited, and they can kind of streamline that process. That'll also, moving them right to invited and getting their acceptance, or if they need to decline the invitation, decline status, will help you figure out how many artists you're going to need as time goes by. And then my last question is, how are you handling application fees for next year? In general, we're doing fees on we're talking about fees on a bit of a case-by-case basis. So per app fees are not changing in terms, like they're not going up and they're not going down, and we're not, you know, nixing them from the program altogether. But they may be significantly lower than they were in previous years, particularly if you're rolling over artists and controlling the number that you're accepting. So, you know, if you're on a standard contract, and you're rolling over all your artists, you might not need to be on the standard contract next year, and the per app fees associated there might not apply. There might be different small show per app fees that apply. It's really going to be case by case, and we recommend emailing us at zapphelp@westaff.org, zapphelp@westaf.org, because we can give you a specific breakdown. You can look at your event, see what it's going to look like next year as well, so that way we can, you know, actually talk about, you know, your event and your fees from your point of view. And I recommend that for anybody on this call who has questions about their fees, not just the person who asked this question, to give us shoot us an email, because we can, you know, we really take a lot of time with those emails, and then you have something in writing that you can use to refer back to as you're planning your budgets and kind of deciding what you're going to do next year. You can have some event-specific numbers for you. Well, thank you for joining me today for this webinar, and, you know, I hope to see you in a future webinar.